On October 13th, 1972, a rugby team from Uruguay called the Old Christians Club is on a plane to Chile for a special match. Many of them have never left their country before, so it's an exciting trip. Some family members are with them for support as they approach the Andes Mountains, which separate Chile and Argentina. The plane starts shaking a bit. One of the passengers says that the warm winds from Argentina meet the cold mountain air, making the plane shake a little, but things get worse. The turbulence increases and suddenly, the plane drops a few miles. Pilots try to keep going through the stormy winds. Everyone holds on tight, and things fall in the corridor. For a moment, they see the sun, but then the plane goes down again, hitting the mountain and breaking in half. One of the players is thrown away with the tail of the plane, while the front part continues until it crashes into the snow. This causes all the seats to collide, resulting in multiple people being killed in various gruesome ways. Slowly, the survivors start to overcome the shock and leave their seats to help those passengers who are trapped. There's blood all around, and two medical students attempt to assist those with broken limbs, trying to calm them down. Some individuals check on the pilot, but he passes away after uttering just a couple of words, and the radio isn't functioning. Despite their attempts to scream for help, no assistance arrives. As night falls, the temperature plummets rapidly. The survivors gather together inside the plane, using bodies in bags to cover any holes, attempting to stay warm. Many of them are unable to stop panicking or crying, so they do their best to comfort each other. In the morning, they sadly find a few more people who have frozen to death. The storm has subsided, and the sun is shining brightly. Surveying their surroundings, all they see are snow and mountains for miles. The group realizes they must take action to survive. They remove seats and debris from the plane, creating space for everyone to sleep at night. On day one, they already count 11 dead, plus the guy thrown away with the tail of the plane. After organizing themselves, they share a meager snack, ensuring they ration their food for longevity. Suddenly, they hear a passing plane, prompting them to shout and wave desperately, but they remain unnoticed on the second night. Prepared to sleep inside the plane, they use clothes from bags as makeshift blankets and cover holes with suitcases. On the third day, Nando finally regains consciousness. Unaware of the crash, he needs a detailed explanation. Despite his frail condition, he manages to move towards his sister, who is also struggling. When they break the news of their mother's demise, Nando is deeply affected, and his thoughts turn to their father left alone in Uruguay. Later, they utilize metal to melt snow for water and create a large X on the ground using suitcases, aiming to catch the attention of passing planes. Reflecting sunlight with mirrors and shouting, they notice the wings of a distant plane rocking, potentially indicating they were spotted. The following day, they hear another plane, but it remains far away, suggesting the search is conducted in a different area, and they go unnoticed. The survivors discuss survival strategies, recalling the presence of batteries in the tail. They decide to construct goggles using mirrors and leather from the seats, intending to explore the mountain and locate the tail. However, upon ascending a few miles, they realize that the crash site is not visible due to the thick layer of snow. Realizing the slim chances of a rescue plane spotting them due to the snow-covered crash site, the group decides to return. However, after a week, they exhaust their food supplies, and with no animals or plants in the vicinity, they attempt to consume a substance from a rock, finding it utterly distasteful. Nando suggests resorting to cannibalism if necessary, leading to a heated debate on whether to consume the flesh of the deceased passengers. Some survivors express concerns about the color of their urine and the fear of legal consequences. Unable to reach a consensus, desperation sets in, and they start consuming anything they can find, including shoelaces and cigarettes, in a bid to stave off hunger. Their unconventional diet leads to the darkening of their urine. Tragedy strikes on the 8th day when Nando's sister succumbs to the harsh conditions. Coco, grappling with grief, decides to pen a letter to his parents, detailing both the tragedy and the unexpected beauty of their surroundings. Subsequent storms force them to take refuge inside the plane for survival. However, by day 21, frustration mounts, and half of the group voices their weariness with the dire situation, prompting an announcement. Those who are willing grant permission for others to consume their bodies if they don't survive. Taking a piece of glass, they extract meat from the deceased to sustain themselves. Witnessing this, some individuals reconsider and join the group outside, opting to partake in the act of cannibalism. Only 5 people remain steadfast in their refusal to engage in such drastic measures. The following day, they establish a more organized system to conceal the bodies during the process, minimizing the gruesomeness for those not involved. Additionally, they begin placing some meat pieces in the sun to warm them. Later, they make an unexpected discovery, a new suitcase buried in the snow containing a radio. Constructing a makeshift antenna, they successfully activate the radio, only to hear the devastating news that the government has ceased the search after 66 missions. The group collectively breaks down, and 4 individuals succumb to desperation, resorting to consuming human flesh. Subsequently, 3 members resolve to venture out again in a renewed attempt to locate the plane's tail. The exploration yields debris scattered across the terrain, along with the discovery of 5 bodies, including the individual who was ejected from the plane during the fall. Progressing becomes challenging due to frequent slips on the icy slopes and the biting winds, making nighttime rest difficult. Huddled against the mountainside, they attempt to sleep amidst a raging storm. Surviving the night, they wake up covered in snow. One is blind, The others weakened. Sliding down on debris, they return. Traumatized, the last one joins in eating human meat, tearfully succumbing on day 17, battling a relentless storm. They huddle inside the plane, sharing stories to lift spirits. Suddenly, an avalanche hits, burying the plane in snow. Panicking survivors on top dig frantically, realizing the storm has intensified. Desperation sets in as they urgently unearth buried passengers, resorting to peeing on the snow to expedite melting. Despite their hard work and frantic efforts, they successfully rescue everyone except a woman who perished. Suddenly, a strange noise alerts them to another avalanche approaching. The new onslaught buries them once more, claiming more lives, including the team captain. Survivors hastily create holes for air, anxiously praying while the sounds of falling snow surround them. Recovering a bit of energy, they shift 8 bodies against a corner. By day 18, buried for 2 days, the hunger becomes unbearable. Forced by circumstances, they reluctantly start extracting meat from the bodies. However, this time is much more challenging as they cannot conceal most of the bodies in the snow, confronting the harsh reality of knowing exactly whose flesh they are consuming. Enraged, Numa vents his frustration by digging and breaking the windows, injuring his leg with the shattered glass. Undeterred, he persists in his efforts. On day 20, he successfully opens a hole in the snow, large enough for the remaining survivors to emerge. After a moment of relief and gratitude for being alive, the group shifts their focus to digging out the plane. Despite the challenging conditions, Numa discovers a cut on his foot, which he had not felt due to the extreme cold. Choosing to ignore it, he continues to contribute to the group's efforts. With the arrival of sunny days, they successfully extract the plane from the snow. Although they contemplate sending a few men on a search, the harsh reality of surviving freezing nights outside remains a significant concern. Eventually, they decide to wait a few more days as summer approaches on day 34. The thaw finally commences. The 2 men who were injured from the beginning are severely ill, and the medical students recognize that there's little they can do in such a short time. They find that Coco's lungs are filled with fluid, and despite their efforts, including CPR, he succumbs to his condition. When they retrieve the body, they come across his letter and preserve it. On day 36, the weather has improved sufficiently for Roberto, Nando, Tintin, and Numa to embark on a new search, donning extra layers of clothing to endure the nights. However, Numa begins to feel dizzy and collapses. Upon examination, they find that his foot wound is infected. The group considers bringing Numa back, but he insists he can return alone and urges them to press on. Once Numa gets back to the crash site, he collapses. After a few hours, he wakes up to find the other sick passenger hallucinating and eventually passing away. The next morning, the group begins removing ice from the cockpit, preparing for any potential need. Numa, feeling frustrated due to his weakness, wants to contribute but finds himself unable. The trio returns with significant news. They've located the tail of the plane through a series of short trips. The discovery brings clean coats, bottles of rum, cigarettes, and even chocolate. Additionally, they retrieve the plane's batteries and attempt to connect them to the cockpit to revive the radio. Despite considerable effort, they only manage to produce some static on the radio, receiving no responses. Days pass, and the group is reluctant to venture outside due to the perilous conditions. Numa's infection worsens, spreading throughout his body. The food from the tail is insufficient, prompting them to resort to extracting meat from the bones for sustenance. Now a routine, extracting meat from bones becomes a grim necessity. Realizing his limited time, Numa stops eating to conserve resources for others. Despite attempts to repair the radio resulting in a short circuit, they abandon the effort in frustration. During another trip to the tail, they count the survivors and leave a message on the plane. Discovering waterproof fabric covering pipes, the group eagerly brings it back to create a makeshift sleeping bag for surviving the cold nights outside. Despite the smaller radio still functioning, the news informs them that 58 days post-crash, the Air Force plans to dispatch another aircraft in search of them. A heated argument arises on the next course of action. Some insist on waiting for the aircraft, but others, skeptical of ever being noticed in the vast landscape, advocate for seeking help. In frustration, Roberto tears off the makeshift sleeping bag. Eventually, the group opts to distract themselves by mimicking bird noises when they spot them and find solace in taking numerous pictures with a discovered camera. Numa grants permission for the others to consume his body, and by morning, he's found lifeless with a note expressing the profound love of sacrificing one's life for friends. Moved by these sentiments, Roberto, Nando, and Tintin, equipped with the new sleeping bag and ample meat, decide to embark on another journey. Their objective is to scale westward, aiming to traverse the mountain and reach Chile. Facing harsh nightly winds, they take refuge by digging a hole in the snow, using the sleeping bag to endure until morning. Upon reaching the summit of a towering mountain, their optimism dwindles as they realize there are still extensive miles ahead. Faced with the challenge of insufficient food for such a journey, thoughts of surrender briefly cross their minds. In an act of selflessness, Tintin decides to return, ensuring enough food for Roberto and Nando. The journey is arduous and extensive, but after traversing challenging terrain, the pair descends into a rocky valley as the snow diminishes. Facing adversity when Nando's shoe breaks, Roberto ingeniously ties fabric around it, enabling them to press forward. After dinner one evening, Roberto experiences vomiting, but Nando provides comfort, and by morning, they resume their journey. Their perseverance yields results as they discover a river with fresh water and even encounter a small lizard. Suddenly, to their astonishment, they notice a man on horseback staring at them from the other side of the river. The sound of rushing water prevents clear communication. Upon observing Roberto and Nando's attempts to communicate, the man tosses some paper and a pencil to them. After an explanation of their situation, the man retrieves the paper to relay the message. The information reaches the air rescue service, prompting a new mission. Returning for Roberto and Nando, the man transports them to his cabin, providing them with much-needed sustenance after their arduous journey. In a matter of hours, the surroundings are inundated with reporters eager to pose probing questions. The news of impending rescue reaches the group at the crash site, prompting them to spruce up and assemble their belongings into bags, even including fragments of the plane as souvenirs. On day 71, the helicopters arrive, and Roberto and Nando join them as guides for the rescue mission. The group is overwhelmed with joy at the sight of the helicopters, shedding tears of happiness. The entire rescue, including the group's insistence on bringing their bags despite limited space, is recorded. Ultimately, 16 people are successfully rescued. Upon reaching the city, their families eagerly await their return. The group is then taken to the hospital, where a large crowd gathers to welcome them as heroes. The doctors, concerned about their health and noting the skeletal state of their bodies, conduct thorough tests. The reporters are kept at bay during this process. They assist one another in having a shower, and then their families take charge of their grooming. Each survivor is provided with their own bed. However, that night, they still grapple with the aftershock, so they huddle together as a group for comfort. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.